All right, welcome to Ramble On, the official podcast of Ted Foxman's unofficial Ramble On television show.
Home video.
Lots of things happening in my life. I don't know about Ted's.
Really? What's been going on?
Oh, we'll get into babies, and we're going to have Paul Scheer, a tremendous actor, but really, more importantly, he's now a pickleball player, which, you know, I like to have the pickleball players on. Ted has still not played. His son is playing with Matt Manass now, and you have
give me a break.
Still not played. I've been trying for 5 years. But anyway, we'll bring Paul on, who was on, I think, one of, obviously everybody loves Veep, but The League is one of those shows that, I don't even know if you watched it, Ted. Did you watch The League?
I did not watch it.
Really?
Yeah.
The League is a really, really hilarious show. You should check that out, and I think you'll enjoy it.
I know. I've heard good things.
Surprised you didn't get to that during the pandemic. Like,
yeah.
busy with Love Island, I guess. You watching White Lotus?
I'm not. And the reason is I was
so angry about it.
No, I'm not. It's not like a protest. But I was very excited for the second season. The first season was obviously great. But then I decided I wanted to wait for at least a few episodes so I could binge it. I didn't want to wait week to week.
Yeah.
And then in the intervening time, I've heard many people say, "Oh, this is not good."
Really?
So
the word is good. I mean, I think.
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah, I heard the word is good.
I thought you told me it wasn't good.
I mean, I do not like it nearly as much as the first season. I think Mike White is one of the best writers in the world.
Yeah.
I think the first season was one of my favorite television shows of the last 10 years, probably.
Yeah.
This is still better than 99.99% of the crap that I have been forced to sit through on television. But I don't think it's as good. But of course, you got to watch it. I mean, it's
I'm gonna watch it. I just now it's now like 4 or 5 episodes in.
I think they've done 5. Are you watching it, Paul? Before we really bring you in on this,
You know what? I have watched the first 3 episodes of it, so like I'm kind of in on it. But yeah, I have not. I didn't watch the first season though.
oh, I love
What?
the first season so much.
I don't know why.
Oh,
yeah.
cow!
I gotta
Well, that's the one you got to watch.
You know, and then Michael Imperioli from The Sopranos, who I did a pilot with that HBO decided to pass on, which is insane. And I mean that sincerely. I still want to air. I still want to put that on the internet.
Oh yeah,
but
Michael's on this season.
I don't know if they'll sue me, but Michael Imperioli is one of the best actors I was lucky enough to work with, even though it was only for a week. So.
His scene in the opening episode where he's on the phone with Laura Dern.
Oh my God! Wait, that's Laura Dern.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Because Mike White, did that show Enlightened,
Which was genius.
Yeah,
the
great
first
show.
season of Enlightened was genius.
And Laura Dern is his wife. You don't ever see her; you just hear her, and it's just Michael reacting to his wife just ripping him to shreds. It's an amazing.
By
scene.
the way, it was amazing because
Wait, why are they? This season takes place in Europe, right?
in Italy,
Right. So why is he apart from his wife?
that's part of the
it
show.
gets
explained?
Show.
All right. Well, I'm just
You want a
curious
recap
as to
of the whole
why a
season?
huge character like Laura Dern as
Well,
an
she
actor
probably-
People can get divorced and
Yeah,
they have
of course.
different,
It's interesting that you now tell me it was
is now
Laura.
the voice of
Well,
the
it's interesting
White
that you say it was Laura Dern on the show. So now I'm guessing she'll show up, but I have no idea. But obviously she's friends with Mike White and did a favor. But it's interesting that you said that because, again, this show is so much better than almost anything on TV. But I'm not loving it like I love the first season. But that scene, I was watching like 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay. And that scene, which is so hard to get emotion out of a person on a phone call, and both of them. You know what? I had no idea it was Laura Dern.
I think he cast Laura Dern because he knew that you needed someone to really carry it because she is driving it and you don't see her at all. It's just her voice. It's
By the way,
so
that's
good.
Paul Scheer. So we're gonna get to him very shortly.
Have you guys watched Tulsa King?
No, but I have to.
I like it. It's interesting. I mean, it's very much what I think you want it to be, but it's Stallone running around Oklahoma just not knowing what apps are, not knowing what Uber is, but then also beating the shit out of everybody.
I didn't even know it aired yet because my buddy Dominic Lombardozzi, who played Dom on Entourage, is in it, and he's always phenomenal. So I'll start
fun.
that. I don't know. I'm behind everything, and I got to see Tar. There's so much to do, but I don't know. I got stuff that's happening at
Tar.
home,
I've
too.
heard good things about that as well.
Yeah, Tar's supposed to be awesome. Todd Field, I went to AFI with. So,
did you?
I had a baby. I don't know if you can bring that up
Oh,
or congratulations
yeah. Hey,
or
what about
anything.
that?
First thing I said to you when I came in was a
Were you busy
congratulations.
this last week?
Yeah,
or
Paul, thank
anything
you.
happening?
Yeah, very kind. Ted brought bagels, but no how's the baby?
Yeah.
None of that. So
We've been talking basically every day, asking how's the baby.
I can't believe that you are here and you look as good as you look after having a baby. Because I feel like I have 2 kids, and that first week and a half, even with the second kid, you're like, oh boy, like life is hitting you hard, and you've had a little bit of a break between your kids. So I mean,
he's had an 18-year hiatus to catch things up on.
Look, I just posted this because I'm embarrassed to say, because people thank you for saying I look good, because everyone on Instagram
Wow, you look good.
No, people keep DMing me how tired I look, and to be perfectly honest with you, look, this is a different way than I did it the first time, when I was scared I was going broke, when begging anyone who could help would help, and I happened to have help, and I happened to have Sarah's mother there, and Sarah's a beast, and I want, Paul, you're a New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
So a beast, just so any of you PC people know, that's a compliment. Sometimes it could be a horrific term, but my fiance is just a killer, and even though I'm currently unemployed, she thinks it's important for me to get my sleep so I can hopefully make some money and get the next 30 years going. So
what a
honestly,
supportive partner she is.
I have my Aura ring which clocks my scores, and honestly, the last 4 days I've gotten the best scores I've had in years.
So you're actually busy during the day. You're wearing yourself out, and you're like, I've earned this rest.
I'll tell you, I don't sleep till 8 o'clock ever. Like 6 o'clock.
No. You're 5 a.m. And I'm getting text messages from him like, what's going on? I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm sleeping.
So the last 2 days, I wake up at 8 a.m. I feel like a freaking zombie. I have no reason to, by the way. And I used to have my mother when I started in this business. I don't know if it's still okay to have a Jewish mother in the current climate that's going on in the fucking world. But
That's
anyway,
the only one you could get.
But anyway, my mother used to call me up when I was in LA at 22. What's going on? And I'd be like, I don't know, just tired. And she'd be like, what are you tired from? You know what I mean? And that's the feeling. But as we know, I think, Paul, maybe you can attest to this, or maybe you're one of those fucking people who functions more properly than I do. But when you're in any type of creative modes, and right now I'm just so you know, Ted, I'll tell you, I wrote the 3rd episode of the Ramble on non-existent television show. But my brain is going and going and going. And since this baby is born, even though it's not like 21 years ago when I legitimately did not know how I would be able to provide for these children, I am now in the same mode. It's not like I don't know how I'm going to provide for them now, but I kind of I keep waking up in this future of like 15 years from now where all my money's gone and like everybody's looking at me and going like,
how'd you blow that?
Yeah, like I'm on the streets and they're like, I think that homeless guy created Entourage. You know what I mean? It's a thought that
the guy who rang you up at Home Depot as you were leaving.
Yeah, no, it really.
Well, look, I've had that nightmare now because who was the guest who came on a little while ago? He said that he went to film school with a guy who was out on the street panhandling for money, right?
It was,
oh my God!
Oh my God!
I don't. The two things I'll say. One, I'm senile.
Your boy
I don't remember
Rob.
it.
Yeah.
Weiss?
Yeah.
He said it right on Larchmont. There's a guy right in front of him.
He says like his kid used to run up to him and be like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And they were interacting.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ!
I mean, it's right. It's possible.
It is.
Possible.
First of all,
but if that happens, move near Rob because Rob gives that guy a lot of money. So there you go.
Weiss, do you hear that? You may have to support me and my child. But those things.
Hey, Doug.
But I mean,
get yourself a cup of coffee.
But I mean that sincerely, and it is. And Paul, you have a wife who's also in the business. Yeah. And we still haven't introduced Paul, which we will. But I like that he's part of this. I think it's nice.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that's so tricky in this business, because you're so unstructured, and once you have the child, you really start to feel it even more that I better fucking do something. Because first of all, I swear to you, these are my thoughts. This is what used to happen. But I used to think, when my kids' first children were born many moons ago, I used to think that I have to be working when they're in high school so that their friends don't go, what does your dad do? You know, like if you ever saw City Slickers, remember City Slickers?
Yeah.
The scene?
I sell air.
Yeah, where Jake Gyllenhaal was actually like Billy Crystal's son, and he has to go in and he's basically like losing his job and he's a fucking loser. And like, it's really when you see it through their eyes, you want to make them proud. Of course, they want to make you proud, but you want to make your kids proud. So
I also think LA is the best place to be to not have a job because everyone seems to be working on something at all times. I think kids are more used to it. Like back where I grew up in Long Island, like
if your dad didn't work,
it would be a thing. I had a friend whose dad he always was telling us he was legally blind, and I found out that he was just in the mafia. That's why he didn't work. So that was. He's like, my dad doesn't work. He's legally blind. I was like, well, he seems to be fine. He drives a car. He's like, yeah, but that's why he doesn't have a job.
Where did you grow up again?
I grew up
Scheer, who we haven't introduced.
No, I grew up in a couple different spots. Central Islip, Huntington. I worked in Syosset. Like I kind of moved around a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up with tons of mobsters. We've talked about Rob Weiss's Film Amongst Friends, but that was basically what I grew up. Goodfellas as well. I mean, my next door neighbor, my first girlfriend's father. I mean, they were both killed by Sammy the Bull, and they're both gone. But
have you guys seen Crimes and Crime and Penalties? That Untold documentary about the.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're talking about the hockey team?
Yeah, the hockey team.
Oh, you're talking about the Thrashers.
The minor league.
Yeah.
I loved that doc was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, that was awesome. So, but I mean, I do feel, and our trajectory, it's so similar to Entourage, and 21 years ago. So it's like, let's see, no, more than that. 2001, 2000. My son's born in 2001, who played Ari's son on the show, and Lev, my producing partner, manager, friend from college, he read the first draft of Entourage. He came over. I was sitting there with my infant in my hands, and he literally, who, by the way, had never done anything in television, nothing, zero zip. He took the script, he crumpled it up, and he threw it at me. And now 70% of that fucking script is in the finished pilot that we actually did. But whatever his problems with the script and his horrific bedside manner, I just remember sitting with my son going like, I'm going to really have to figure something else out because this business
isn't working.
Yeah, this business is not going to be what I'm going to be a part of. You know what I mean? So, and then it's probably 2 years from that point till we actually filmed the pilot of Entourage. So we're still way ahead with Ramble on. The only difference is that HBO owned that project, and this one Ted Foxman owns. So it's really up to you at this point.
Ted, are you going to start your own streaming?
Well,
network?
I'm laying less people off, and there's less chaos at my offices.
You have more time to devote to Emmy campaigns.
That's right. All of it.
It's interesting though. I think with kids, the thing I've noticed is you have to be more focused. You can't mess around because you have time. Like I have to get up at a certain time. I have to go to, get my kids out the door. So I have my work time much more carved out, which I think actually makes me more productive. It took me a bit to kind of get on that
You're
track.
structured. You're one of those guys. You're like a Stephen King type of guy. I'm a ADD, procrastinating disaster. I always have been.
Well, I think it's hard to find that space. But I've seen on your Instagram, you have a nice space. You have a room where you write, and you've got 3 scripts out there so far. Are you happy with where it's going at this point?
I look, I love it, and I know, I'm the last minute guy.
Right.
I always am. So this is different because I'm kind of just doing it on my own. And part of you, which is always the case with writers, is like, what am I wasting my time here? Why am I doing this? So it's that, but the truth is, and I've talked about it a lot on this podcast, you should, and again, I'm lucky. I have enough money I can probably, short of something happening, I can die where I can pay for my own funeral. So I'm alive and
that's it. That's the goal.
No GoFundMe for his
I don't
his
need any money for my funeral.
All right, there you go.
But
Is that the standard of when you've made it, you can pay for your own funeral?
for writers to really want to succeed in this business,
I always tell people, like, if you want to be a writer, keep the job that you're in because you can write on the side. And then to give up everything, like that seems like to quit your job and be like, I'm just going to go write my screenplay. That seems daunting because to sell it and get it out the door, that's impossible.
I look at it the opposite, and I don't think, but again, look at me, I'm unemployed. So, I don't think you go into this business part-time. If you want to, and I was obsessive. When I was 22 to 27, I was obsessive. I am going to figure this out. I'm going to make this happen. I don't have that type of drive anymore. Again, I've always been a fear-based person. I get motivated by fear, and when I used to legitimately think I would not be able to feed my kids, that puts a lot of fear into you. So
is this kid just to get a little bit more motivation?
a
going
little
on?
bit,
Exactly.
yeah, that was the only purpose of it. I mean,
He told Sarah, he's like, listen, I'm only doing this so I have a little bit of fire breathing down my neck.
yeah, but so far, it's embarrassing to say it's been a smooth ride. She has allowed me to go upstairs into my office where I do have a great space where I do procrastinate and walk around in fucking circles and watch soccer and everything else that's going on, which we're missing the soccer match. By
We
the way,
are.
right now.
We're doing this right now in the
Yeah,
middle
but
of,
I can pretty much guess
big
it's
one.
probably 0-0 because every game I watch is 0-0.
All draws.
Yeah.
So, all right, Paul Scheer, let's
Yes.
welcome him on. Actor, comedian, podcaster, and a maker of an independent pilot, from what I'm told.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting. So I've been a fan of this show. Obviously, I was listening to the Victory podcast, and then when I was back in the day before Ted was here, and I've been kind of following it, and I've been excited about it because I did something very similar back in the day, not back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago, where we made an independent pilot. And we thought, like, this is a good way to do it. You don't have to worry about getting notes. You can just make what you want to make. And we got to bring it to Sundance, and we screened it at Sundance, and we screened it. We had a pilot that was probably like $300,000, and it got screened next to an hour-long pilot that was $13 million. That was a Hulu show that I guess they did pick up, and then he wanted to screen it. And
They did pick it up.
they didn't. No, it was like basically like Hulu financed the pilot, and then they never picked it up. So then they were like, well, we'll bring it to Sundance and see if there are any buyers at Sundance to do it. So it was $300,000 pilot next to a $13 million pilot, which is a little daunting, but I think we actually screened really good, and we got like these great reviews and write-ups, but we never ended up selling the show and had great people attached to it.
It's a great story, Paul. Thanks. Thanks for coming.
But it's been interesting because I think it's part of what the problem is in this world is that the TV executives that you deal with, they want to get their fingerprints on stuff. And so what you're saying to them is, I'm going to go outside the system. I have a friend, Michael Showalter, when he helped produce Search Party, and they did it the same way. They independently produced it, then they brought it, and then they were able to go make that show for 3 or 4 seasons, whatever they did there. And it's a constant battle though, because you have to basically make somebody go, we're going to give you $14 million right up. Like they don't get the deal. Yeah. Or to buy the whole season. Because they have to go right into production. There's no like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to test it. We're going to screen it. It's like, and I think that part of this process, it's weird that people need to fall in love with it at the network level on some level. It's like, well, I brought it to you. Here's a log line. Here's a script. Here's the shooting script.
Well, they want
Here's
their
the
piece
cast.
in it.
Yeah.
I mean, they get to go home and say, that was my idea to put that in there. And, we've definitely, again, we haven't had anybody see it at the streaming level, but we have heard from the agents, some people do not want a finished pilot. They want to develop it.
Well, my question is, would you ever like just cut it as a sizzle and not present it as a finished pilot? Just say, hey, we kind of just shot an idea of what it would look like, and here's a script. Could you do that?
I mean, we could, but I again, in my humble opinion, I think it's too good for me to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll, have to figure out a way to put it out if one of the streamers doesn't want to do it. And again, our cast is, in my opinion, so high end, and our production, and it looks like a $13 million show to me. But I don't know. Well,
I mean, you must get frustrated on some level though too, because it's like you've done this, you've done it successfully, and the people I was working with when I did that pilot, like different people came in from different levels, but you are coming in as somebody who has, you're nominated for things. Do you feel like, is there an anger there that you have, just trust me, I got this? Because you are in the zeitgeist, you're always kind of there, you know what's going on in the world. I feel like the pilot is great, and you are kind of touching everything that's kind of hot now, and in a weird way, it should be picked up now, so when it gets on the air in a year, everyone will be in that same kind of space.
You know what? I've never been the type that's like, I deserve this because I did that.
Right.
I believe, I get it. Everybody's got their jobs to do, and they want to make sure that they have something that works. And if my name was so valuable right now because I had just done something hot, that's when they put you on and they go, from the creator of White Lotus, from the this or that. So right now, I don't have that, so the pilot has to stand on its own. So I don't have anger about that. What I have anger about is, and it's never been different, not when I was nominated for Emmys and Golden Globes. These representatives are such shitheads, and they waste so much fucking time with nonsense that I don't understand the purpose why. I mean, we have the biggest manager in the business. Our phone call, I can sell this in 5 seconds. I'm a fucking big wig, blah, 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 blah. And then he literally vanishes. Now, I didn't chase him down. He called me, saw the pilot, and wanted to do that. And then I get from my own old agent, I didn't expect to like this, he tells me. Okay? I didn't expect to like it. Now, I don't care again because that's irrelevant.
Right.
He did like it. He says he loved it. And then again, it's like missing out of action for a week for this. So,
Well, forget about anything until after the new year. Right now, I mean, right, everything after Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
you're done.
yeah,
I mean,
well,
that's
now we know that. And for real, with all the bullshit of stalls and this and that, after New Year's, this is going to the streamers one way or the other. Part of me, I guess, insecurity is like you want to have that Ari guy who makes the phone call and sets it up. But the truth is, it really doesn't fucking matter. They're going to see the show. They're going to hear what the future of the show is, and they're going to make their decision or not. So we're negotiating right now with a big production company, and whether we go with them or not, I guess we'll figure out in the next week or so. But I don't have anger about anything except for how much time gets wasted by people. That's what kills me. Even though I waste a lot of time myself.
Right.
And once you go into production, then okay. Now it's like,
But it's a
game
lot
on,
of waiting just to get an answer to say, oh, well, we got to wait another week before we can give you another week to tell you to wait for a little bit more.
That's what frustrates me. And part of what I say about having a new baby and part of what I talk about of if you want to get into this business, there's so much time that's wasted for even the most successful people in this business.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating. And part of me goes, you were talking about being on Long Island with one of those jobs. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I go back and do that with this new kid, go.
What would be your ideal job? Like if you could do any job, like, I mean, I know that entertainment is where you are, but what would be your ideal job, you think?
Well, this is probably my ideal job.
Okay.
Like if I could sit in my house in Long Island, I loved where I grew up.
Right.
Even though for real, there were, I mean, my friend that I saw at the 30-year reunion is in jail for 6 murders, and
So he did it after the reunion?
At the reunion, I walked up to him, and I have a great picture of us at the reunion, 30-year reunion, maybe it was 25, and I said, "You're not going to cause any trouble tonight, are you?" He goes, "Come on, Doug, I've changed." And then he was arrested for 6 murders, like. He's doing life.
I've changed. I don't mess around at
He
reunions
changed
anymore.
after
Now I
that
just
6
kill
murder.
people.
Yeah.
But I grew up with the Wolf of Wall Streets to the guys who've built billion-dollar tech companies. It was an awesome mishmash of characters, and I always wanted my kids to grow up in that. I had 20 to 30 kids that I could play sports with right on my street every single day. So part of me, you go, what's the best job? If it was a regular job outside of the entertainment industry, I can't say what that would be.
Pizza parlor.
Pizza. I would love to own a pizza place, but it's hard work, man. I mean, I'm trying to get the Courage Bagels guy, Chris, to open up in La Quinta. And when I talked to him about, have you gone to Courage?
Oh yeah, of course. It's right by my house.
It's so good. That's work that becomes like 24 hours a day. You're up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I can't say what my perfect job is, but I just kind of wished I had a little structure right now.
Right.
I just wish I had a little, and
Well, it's hard to write what you're doing right now. You're writing 3 episodes of a show that you've already done, and this is for you. It's for the prospective buyers, but I understand. It's like a hard thing. It's like there's no deadline like hanging over your head at this point.
Yeah, and no one's paying me, which is weird.
Would you ever write a novel? Is that something that you would ever do? Like, would you go into Quentin Tarantino now has been doing more of that kind of stuff? Would you ever do that?
I'm not smart enough. People have always read my scripts, and I'm not an action line guy. I'm such a dialogue driven guy. So my manager who was producing partner on this show, he used to say, you gotta work on these action lines. And I'd say, why? I'm going to make this. I know what it looks like. I know what the scene will be. I know what the location looks like. But very important to focus on that too. But I'm not good with the, how about you? Would you ever write a novel?
I'm actually in the middle of writing my book, but that's not like a novel. It's not like a real, I'm writing about a bunch of essays, which has been great and a totally different thing. But part of the reason why I was doing the book was because, again, it's what can you control in this business? Like, what are things that you can work on that feel like, oh, this is going to have an end that I can maybe see something tangible? Because I think there's so many scripts that we've all done, and pilots, and shows that you've been attached, and there's just no, not fairness to it, but it's a random whether or not what works or what doesn't work.
Yeah, well, and also it's not even what works or what doesn't work, because we know how many shows barely got on the air, including Entourage, Seinfeld, that then become enormous successes, and how many are out there that never saw the light of day. So now, Paul, you're at like the forefront of podcasting. I mean, you started a podcast 12 years ago.
12 years ago, when people were like, "Well, what's a podcast?" And we were like, "Well, just come on. It's like the radio. Well, how can I get on my phone?" Yeah, so we started doing this show called How Did This Get Made with Jason Mantzoukas and my wife, June Diane Raphael, and we didn't know. It just seemed fun. Like I grew up listening to Howard Stern, loving like listening to that kind of community. And I was like, oh, I just want to do that. That'd be so much fun. So that's how it kind of started. And now 12 years later, we've just been able to do it.
Really, how were you getting it out 12 years ago?
It was, there was a podcast app on Apple that you had to download it separately. It was not part of the package of, the apps. And, you could listen to it online. There were ways. It was like Mark Maron was doing it. A handful of people were doing it, but it wasn't a big deal. Chris Hardwick at that point. And then it just started to explode. But we weren't making any money. Commercials, anything, all that sort of stuff didn't seem like it was a real thing. It was like, oh, we had a beautiful studio. We could go in there and just record.
Well, that's the thing. You just love doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you find that stuff in this business, like, how much Ted loved the production and myself as well. Because I love production. I'm not a big fan of the writing process, unfortunately, even though that's the key to my life. But this is just, it's fun.
But this is interesting because I've heard you talk about this because it is like when you're on the sets, it's so much fun. You're actually doing something, you're there, but now you don't want to direct something that's not your own words. So you have to have the right sandwich to kind of sit down there.
I have got so many obstacles that my brain creates to cause me problems rather than, it's not even that I don't want to direct things that aren't my own words, like I'm some control freak. Yeah. I'm not that kind of director, Okay. I see what I write, and I don't necessarily see what someone else writes, and I don't want to try to interpret it, and I am,
How are you running a room? Like when you're on Entourage, like did it all go
worst.
through? Yeah.
I'm the worst. I'm the worst room runner in the history of the world, and I do believe Ted will attest to this, and so will everyone else in my production. I'm such a fantastic showrunner on all other levels, but a room runner, I'm a nightmare because I don't know how to get out what I want from other people. And I've had some incredibly talented people that have been in the room with me that I'm sure felt that I was not great. And it's not that I'm not collaborative, but I sometimes it's easier for me to just sit down and write it than try to either explain it or fix somebody else's script. And I don't even mean fix, to make it work for myself.
Yeah, you need it to be what you see in your head. So, I mean, in a weird way, like writing these 3 scripts and maybe a 4th or whatever, you are in this zone where you are able to, it's like to really have that full control then in a weird way.
It is a control thing probably, but it's not on the set. I'm so, and by the way, it's not on the script too. Ted knows. As soon as I'm done with the script, I love anyone who's got input, anyone who's got ideas I'm good with. But that beginning process of sitting in the room, breaking stories, for whatever reason, my brain doesn't work well with that. I'm better at just sitting down and typing. And as a writer, sometimes just magic happens.
Yeah.
And, and I always say to writers, just fucking write. And I know they go, what? Like, I do not believe in writer's block. I believe in laziness and I believe in distractions. But once you sit down and start typing, for me, something comes out. And usually a lot of the scripts for Entourage, I would type 15 pages, and I would come in and I would hand it out to everybody.
Right.
And sometimes I'd go, you finish it, you come up with that, or you change whatever you want. But that was the easiest way it was for me to work, which is not a good room system. And that's why even for this show, I'm not going to have a big room. I mean, I have no interest in that whatsoever. So I'll either write most of them or have a couple of people. So.
Yeah, and you could kind of just have them kind of add to what you were doing. Because I feel like the thing that's so interesting about the pilot, it's so funny. But you really, the dialogue is it feels so natural, and I feel like that's the real what you're able to do is capture that. So on set, how when you're directing that. Because I think on the BTS of it, like they're saying oh, I want you to do it like this. You're telling Charlie to do it like this, but it's like you see or you hear a certain version of Charlie that he may not be able to see himself.
Yeah.
And how is that like directing someone as themselves? I mean,
you know what? I mean, it was great with Charlie because you obviously with Dylan and Connolly, I have a shorthand of 8 years, and even those guys, they got to the place at times where they're like, just give me the fucking line reading, because actors often despise that. And Charlie, I was very careful because, look, the guy's one of the great comic actors of all time. But sometimes I would say, look, just hear me out in this rhythm.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, great. But it worked very well for us. And Charlie, from day one of the script, sat with the script. Our first week, Ted, me, Kevin, and Charlie sat down, and anything that he didn't felt smooth in his voice, we changed it. So it's very collaborative in that sense. But like you say, I do hear every sentence the way I think it should be said. But there's always room for interpretations, So.
And how's this relationship working out between the two of you? Because
Terrible.
Ted, obviously you guys are podcast
exhausted.
hosts. But getting into this is because in a weird way, Ted is. Have you ever worked with somebody this closely? Obviously, not just on the money front, but creative front. Because you're sending Ted stuff later. Have you read all these other scripts so far?
I just found out 8 minutes ago that he had done this last one.
Well, you read the first two.
The first two I did.
Yeah.
I often have a group of people that I send scripts to, and I listen to them carefully, Rob Weiss being one of them. But this relationship, which at the beginning was terrifying because he's putting up the money, and I have no idea what his sensibilities are going to be. And more importantly, I have no idea what it's going to be like when he reads a script. We talked about this on a couple of podcasts ago, but one of the biggest screenwriters in the business at the time, who wrote a movie called Consenting Adults, had read a 15-page short film that I did for AFI. And he wrote like a 20-page letter about how horrible this thing was. Now, I was 22 years old.
Right.
And my producer was friends with
longer
this
than
guy.
the script.
It was much longer than the script. And he wrote this entire thing talking about how awful this was and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't have the confidence to go,
Oh,
fuck
shut up.
you.
Yeah.
I was just like, holy shit, maybe he's right. This guy's a real writer,
Yeah.
whatever. But anyway, we made the film, which was a short film I did at AFI. David Schwimmer was in it and some other people. And he saw it after and wrote an apology that he just read the tone all wrong.
didn't get it.
Right.
It's not that he didn't get it. He just had his
hard.
own.
It's hard to get tone sometimes, or to see, because you can go in there and start reading somebody else's script in a different way, and it will set off all the jokes. There's a great script that I read that if you don't read it knowing it's a comedy, it's but it's driving hard into this one direction. It just seems like, well, this is totally off. Sensibility wise, it doesn't feel like this is going to work in the marketplace. But it's like, no, you have to understand it. And it's almost like you need to write a letter before the script being like, this is what I envision it to be like.
But it's also the same thing you were just saying. It's like, I see these lines.
Yeah.
And sometimes someone will read them and they don't get it. And then I say it and they get it. And and it's just, it's a tough thing. But for writers, you have to obviously, until you get to a place where you can make stuff, you have to get it on the page. But this relationship, I was terrified. What the fuck is this going to be like? He's putting up the money. How much do I have to listen to and this and that? But we fortunately seem to be on the same page. I think he realized early on that I'm not precious about a single word.
Yeah.
And he's got his own creative contributions in that script, as does most of the people who worked on it.
Now, see, as a longtime listener of the show, though, I don't understand how you guys met. How did you go, I want to do this? As a producer.
I came out here from Chicago almost 6.5 years ago. I came out here always wanting to do it.
Okay.
That's for me, that was the reason why. The weather obviously is better than Chicago, but I always wanted to get into entertainment. I had been trying different things in different avenues over the last few years. Not like I'm working on it every day, just, organically meeting people, networking, diving in. I had a couple of experiences that were kind of nightmarish because I wasn't like those other people. Doug and I are very similar in the way, from a work ethic perspective, we like to do nothing,
right?
But when we decide we're going to do something, then we're going to do it. I had a relationship with some people, I won't name who they are. Very, very, very accomplished writers.
Sure.
Like the lead writer on some of the biggest shows in television.
Got it.
And we partnered up, and in the first 2 weeks, nothing that they said they were going to do happened. Everything I said I was going to do happened.
Right.
And I went, oh God, this is a nightmare. And we got out, luckily, because I made it I was probably hard enough for them that they were like, "Oh, forget it.
Yeah.
We're just gonna end it." And I was fine with it ending. Doug and I are different in that way because when we see something, we don't like a lot of. I don't mean to portray the business in that way, but we don't like a lot of the stuff that happens in the business, which is why we did this. This is much more of an entrepreneurial effort. And that's my roots. So Doug's a writer, but you don't realize it when you're in that position, and probably your position as well. You are an entrepreneur when you decide you're not going to go take a regular paycheck and you're going to focus on something that you don't know what the outcome is. That's the definition of an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter that it's a script or a show or a radio or whatever you're gonna end up doing. Taking that risk and doing that together. And that's, for me, that it was attractive, but I also like making, not just entertaining. I've always been like, I like throwing parties. I like entertaining people. I like making sure people have a good time. Like, I like playing host. And there's nothing better, in my opinion, when you're doing that and people can sit down. How big of a role does TV and entertainment play in our lives?
Yeah.
Like, my family was just in visiting for Thanksgiving last week, right? What did we do all week that we could all do together, from the 77-year-olds in the room and to the 12-year-olds in the room? We sat down and watched movies and TV shows. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And that stuff's important, and it's some of the glue that binds our culture, certainly, and what we do with our days. And to be able to make money doing that for me is a
Well, it's interesting.
huge opportunity.
Obviously, like, you guys are doing it on a different level than what I did it on. But I've been doing this kind of stuff in the past. I created a handful of shows, and I had this deal at one point when Kevin Riley was over at Fox. We made these like sizzles. We basically made people would write scripts and we'd shoot like a sizzle reel of it, but we'd try to shoot the whole episode if we could and try to sell these shows to show people like what we envision. Because I think part of this thing is when you're a writer, director, producer, you want to show somebody what your vision is because you want to avoid these issues that you talked about with not getting the tone, not getting the thing right. And I think that even if the things that didn't go, none of them were a loss as far as the experience, because the experience is amazing. You get to work with great people. Things lead to other things and different projects. So it's a real catch-22 because you create something and you put it into this business that I think is just made to make you wait around, made to make you just sit there and even though as you can only do so much, you can only get to a certain point with this unless you figure out a way to get it out there fully, which it could be happen too.
But you're bringing up a good point, and for me, I actually didn't realize this because I came out here with the idea that I was going to do something in this business and do well in it.
Yeah.
And through this process, I've actually learned to enjoy the process of something.
You got it.
By the way, I never had that. My whole entire life. In 48 years, I've never had I'm really loving this. I was always waiting for the outcome.
Yeah, it's sometimes the doing. I mean, so now, Doug, you've been in this for a long time, like with like the Michael Imperioli thing. Like, did you enjoy that, or you look back at that and like, fuck? Like, is it like, where do you carry that? Like, yeah.
Oh, it was great. That I have a lot of anger about, because HBO, Chris Albrecht was the guy that really championed Entourage, and the people that came in after him, I don't think they cared about Entourage or liked it. But that show is better than most of the half hours that followed it on HBO. And the shit that they put on after that was, of course, it was aggravating. And to not give me that chance there with Michael Imperioli, Eddie Burns, Michael Rappaport. But it's an excellent pilot and still holds up 7 years later. So that I have some anger about it. And that kind of put me in a mindset of the business like, God, I just, I don't care, because the grind of working with people that I don't respect their thoughts or their opinions was tough, And that's why this process and why I can do the process and I've been lucky enough in the limited things that I've done. The first independent film I did, which was less than $100,000 budget, I had essentially creative freedom, provided I worked within the confines of what the story was that was given to me and the budget that we had. The same with a movie I did called Kissing a Fool, which people have heard about on this podcast before. But I was lucky enough that the producers, Andrew Foreman, Todd Mandillo, they pretty much gave me creative freedom as long as I used the storyline and kept within budget. And Entourage, after it got going, I almost had complete creative freedom. So all of the times that I've got into where I had some shithead at CBS when I sold the show tell me, who gives a fuck about any of these characters, which I think is the same. I know if I would have shot it, you would have given a shit about these characters. But part of me was, and it wasn't a rebellious thing, it was just like, I don't enjoy this enough to keep fighting the fight. So with this process, which... Again, it sucks that now we're heading towards pretty much exactly a year since I started writing it, which we were moving so fast. It was amazing. I sat down and I wrote. I sent him and Dave Perkle, my cinematographer, and a couple other people pages every day. I think I wrote the script in like 10 days. I took everybody's thoughts and contributions in. Then I brought another fucking writer in.
I got to hear this story off air because I want to know who this person
hear it
is.
On air. It's honestly,
I know. It seems this guy seems like the worst dude.
It is truly the worst thing I've ever experienced in this business in 30 years.
What is it? What did he do? No, we don't have to have a name, but like what he just was overnoted you or just
No, I couldn't have been more collaborative with him. We couldn't have had a greater process, and we had a press release that I had nothing to do with, by the way. Ted was having a press release, which a press release for anyone who's in this business, and this guy's been
that's
in the
sometimes
business
the
for 30
best
years.
part of it.
But no, to me it's to me it's not. To me it's an ego trip, and it has nothing to do with anything. The press release had one purpose: to maybe get someone to buy this project.
Sure,
that's it. So
at least to inform the industry that it was happening.
Well, my whole thing, and sorry about the press release, is like sometimes you work on so many things and no one gets to see it. So the only thing they get to see is a deadline pull, and they go like, and then that's what you can say, like, oh, what do you have? Well, I had that deadline announcement.
I mean, I still have people ask me questions about deadline announcements from 15 years ago, and I try to tell everybody they're meaningless. But what happened with this one is it's so sick. His name was only listed twice in the press release.
Wait, that's the issue? That he got upset about the press release?
He sends me a nasty message. By the way, it's night. I go to sleep at like 9 even before the baby came.
We were in the middle of shooting, by the way.
By the way, I'm in the middle of
we had
rewriting a
off.
scene, and I'm just like, the last thing I wanted to. I've had so many conversations with him about the press release where he can tell you. I said, I don't give a fuck about the press release. Make sure everybody's happy. Put my name in it, which specifically as little as possible, because when the Entourage movie came out, they said written by, produced by, directed by, created by a show. I said, I look like a fucking idiot. I don't want my name listed 400 times on this movie. So I just said, Ted, handle the press release. Anyway, I got a very nasty message from him. This is one of my oldest friends of 30 years who came onto this project at the last minute, by the way. And again, we could debate whether he was helpful or not, but he was helpful to me, and I could not have been more gracious about it. And then he sends this nasty message, and I was like, I told Ted, I go, I don't have time to deal with this shit. You know, like this is ridiculous about a press release. So Ted wrote a response back, which was probably immature and was a mistake. And I just sent it back verbatim, and I didn't look at it. I get back from him, I quit, basically.
Whoa, just because he was listed twice in a deadline press release.
Yes, by the way, he's the only person listed twice besides me. You know, and I've worked, and you know, these are people, I've assembled a crew of friends and family of 30 years.
And again, that's what you don't care about. Like that, I agree with you. Like, I mean, that's so all over a press release.
All over a press release. But anyway, I still thought, like, okay, this is so ridiculous. Like, okay, we'll deal with it. So I said, Ted, do me a favor, call him up and make this right. He did not return Ted's phone calls. Then the next day, we're on set, and my AD, who also is my friend for 30 years doing the show, actually, I'm sorry, he was executive producer of this show, not AD. He gets a message from him, and I said, tell him to come down to set. He will be welcome with open arms, which I still honestly believed. Like, he'd come back, we'd have a stupid conversation and move on from this. But he not only did he not, then he's got his girlfriend, throwing me off of projects that I brought to her.
Whoa.
So it was extremely, I can say this with all sincerity, there is no person in this business that I've ever despised the way I despise him over this situation. And there's not a single thing that I did because, by the way, I didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. He quit, and nothing changed after that. Nothing changed before that. Nothing happened. Then I started getting letters from his lawyer, which is, again, I want to say this to all people out there. When you are an entrepreneur, wait till somebody has some fucking money before you start calling for lawyers, because we are in this grind for a year now. every day it's still a grind. And, one of the things I used to tell some people on Entourage who contributed greatly, they would say, oh, how come this and that? And I would say day one is not day two. Day one in this business or any entrepreneurial business is where it all happens. And everyone who comes in, whether it's Michael Patrick King, who took over for Darren Star. Yeah. Darren Star is the one who sat down, found that book, and made this happen. Now, Michael Patrick King ran it into a hugely successful thing, but there is no existence without that. Like Steve Jobs, there is no Apple without him sitting in his garage and doing it. So I think for everybody, the reason the creator credit, which is always a word that I feel like it's an uncomfortable word because so many people are so involved.
Especially in TV, because it's such a collaborative medium across the board.
Right. But at the same time, while I feel proud to say Entourage is my stamp, it's because I sat in a room by myself when no one gave a flying fuck that I was doing that, and while everyone else was doing other things. And those are the moments that you have to do to get to the finish line, and that's why.
Well, this is so funny. Like I am working on this show right now, and it's an adaptation of an Israeli show, and the show you couldn't just make it here, right? And so one of the deal points in it was, well, you won't ever be listed as the creator of the show; it will be the other person. I'm like, oh, that's interesting though, because it's not. I'm not going verbatim. I'm kind of creating a whole new character. It's interesting how people get very protective of that credit or what they want or how they want to be put in. And I just kind of like stepped away. I'm still doing it, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about that right now. But it is interesting. Like there's a lot of jockeying for like maybe success too. Like, I mean, when you're doing something like this on this level, like contracts and then it gets awkward because you have to have probably a contract on some level with this guy to be like,
no, I didn't. I went on complete trust, which I was a moron. And I also, by the way, which you tell me who would do this before he ever typed a single letter, I said, I'll split the screenplay credit with you. We already had a Go show with a finished fucking pilot that was based on my life. And on my life, the reason I did that is because I thought it would be valuable to him at some point, and it wasn't going to affect my life. I wasn't giving up the created by credit, but I thought it'll help him, and I don't care because I'm not that precious. And the truth is, if Ted, who contributed as much to the script as he did, or more, in fact, because we changed the entire fucking thing, or Charlie wanted a writing credit because they wanted to be writers, I would get it. And as I said to him, I go, there's nothing for you to get out of a writing credit. It does nothing except for you to walk around and go, hey, I wrote this, which, again, you didn't. You wrote it when you sat down with a blank piece of paper and there was no idea and there were no characters and you created a world and you created something. But I did, and I can really, there's always two sides to a story. There's not here. There's ungrateful, absolute elitist attitudes. And one of the things that bothers me about this town, and while I appreciate that I was paid very well as a writer and director, I have crew members who bust their ass and have worked harder. We brought, one of my key grip from Entourage on Victory the other day. These people work fucking 16-hour days lifting stuff and doing this. They get no credit whatsoever. Nobody's giving them, a strike to help them get what they need and stuff. So I was offended on it on so many levels, especially since this project was meant to be this incredibly joyous experience, bringing back a host of people that had worked together before and doing it in an incredible way. And the truth is, he's the only person that absolutely took it and tried to use it for his own purposes as opposed to the team goal. And now that we're sitting here a year later, which I would be so shocked if we don't get this out there somewhere. But still, the fact that 8 months ago I was getting letters from a lawyer and I'm going, what kind of lunacy is this?
Yeah.
And it is the pathetic nature of this business, and it is the self-entitled attitude of so many people in this business who've never really figured out how to go grind out something from the get-go and bring everyone in. And again, appreciating the money, which is why I say, when I sell something to a studio, Entourage, as much as I hate hearing someone telling me they don't like something I do, it's their money. I get it. And if I want to go make it on my own, then I should write my own checks and go make it. So anyway.
And that's a bummer because now, Ted, you're producing his next project, right?
Who, the other guy?
Yeah.
By the way,
I signed him to a 5-picture deal.
And that's it.
by the way, Ted was going to finance another script that, again, I brought this guy on late on an idea that was mine and split the script fee dead down the middle, even though I had already sold it before he ever even was on it. But I just, it's a shame because you see it so much in this business and you see people who just don't appreciate anyone or anything, and it's upsetting.
It was a real act. Like the description that I gave Doug, I was like, wow, I've never seen somebody self-sabotage so badly in the middle of things going well. Like it's one thing
like
for
David
for
Caruso
you to
style.
be like this is going down, I'm going to take it down. It was like, this is going amazing, I'm going to shit the bed. It was a very bizarre
A lot
reaction.
of people do that in this world. I feel like you see that every now and then. I was saying, like, that's David Caruso coming off of NYPD Blue. Like, 1 year on NYPD Blue, he's like, I want off this show. I want to be an actor. I want to be a movie actor now. And it's like, and that worked out the way it worked out instead of staying on a show that's really successful.
Yeah.
It's like,
now, obviously, we can't quite compare it because, it was the #1 show on television, and right now we're not even on fucking a computer
We're the
yet.
#1 show not on television.
But it all, remember,
there it is.
remember Ted made hats, Ramble on hats, which were awesome, which how much a crew loves hats and T-shirts, and Ted paid for them. No, we're never getting our money back from those hats and T-shirts. And what happened? The second you pull up in the thing, and he's like, "Where's mine?"
Well, he actually followed me out to the parking lot while I just went to go do something in my car, and he was like, I hear there are hats. And I was like, okay, I don't know who told you that, but yes, there are hats.
but anyway, it encapsulates the business in one story, and it's disheartening and upsetting because 30-year friendship over nothing, for nothing. It would be one thing if I was like, listen, man, you are not working, you are not getting paid, you are not. We didn't even have deals. Everybody worked for pretty much free. Except for,
That's the same thing. I mean, that's look. I come up from that business. Like, I started out at the UCB Theater, which is the Upright Citizens Brigade, and the people I worked with there, we were doing shows, $5 shows to sold out crowds. We weren't making any money, but these are the people that I perform with on stage, and still to this day, I love all those people. And there was a thing that happened over at that theater where people started getting upset about not getting paid enough. But when you're doing a $5 show and you're trying to keep a theater, there's certain things where you can cut your nose off to spite your face sometimes. And that gets to be...
The worst part is, by the way, if the guy said he had to get paid for whatever, even though I wasn't getting paid, I would have gotten him money. The whole thing is just, it's...
It definitely did not need to go down the way it went down.
But you make the point that I know. I started out, I made my own short films.
Yeah.
I begged, borrowed, and stole. I used my credit cards. I did all of that stuff. And until you lay your own money on the line, which I was literally about to put $250,000 into this until Ted he's drinking. By the way, he's chugging a beer as I said. But I was putting my own money on the line, and I was saying this is my life because the show is about my life in this podcast world with my friends that I worked with for 20 years. So anyway, hopefully you never deal with that. So let's get. I want to hear some about the start of your career. Because you've done so much stuff. So what happens to you? You get into this when you're young? Or what?
When I'm going to NYU, and I find this group called the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, and they are this improv group. They were performing on the 5th floor of like a hardware store, and it was a free show to go in, but $1 to leave. And you'd go there and you'd watch these shows, and it was amazing. You'd see people like Tina Fey and Adam McKay all performing improv like on Sunday nights. And they started teaching, and I started taking classes with them. And then that theater just kept on growing and growing. And like everybody who's come out of that space has been really great. But as that theater grew, I partnered up with Aziz Ansari and Rob Hubel and Jason Wolner, who directed the new Borat movie. And we created a sketch show for MTV, and we wrote it and directed it in New York City. We did 2 seasons of that. And then I went over to the League for a bit and did that for 7 years. And then I created my own show for Adult Swim for a couple of years, for 4 years. And then Veep, and then over to the show I just did with Don Cheadle over at Showtime
Yeah,
called Black
Black
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah. So
Did
it's
that,
been-
I'm sorry, but did that already air?
it did. We did
was
3 years of it. Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. Why did
No, don't worry about it. It's, Showtime. It's hard to get Showtime. It is. Oddly, it is hard to get Showtime.
By the way, it is actually hard to get Showtime because
I
there's
literally
Showtime
no one-
anytime, and there's Showtime, and I've ordered it.
Showtime. The Showtime app is more expensive than the Netflix app, and I think at that point you have to say like, there's a problem. Like, I guess if you're a real fan of the Tudors, you can have access to that all the time. But
I don't even want to say
reruns.
about the expense. I've got something, and the only way I can access it is if I put it on my phone and stream it. When I go to the app on the actual Apple
Doesn't
TV,
work.
it doesn't work.
We had the biggest I think issue that I had with that show was no one had Showtime. All my friends never had Showtime. Like, I don't have that. I don't have it. And then the weird thing was that Paramount Plus is Showtime, but because they were carriage deals, it's not on Paramount Plus. But now it's a real complicated.
But you were happy with the show.
I was thrilled with the show. I mean, got to work with like amazing people. Regina Hall as Don Cheadle, Andrew Reynolds, myself, Casey Wilson. It was an insane cast. And I've been lucky with that kind of stuff. But I started off the same way. Like when I started off in New York City doing these shows at UCB, we were doing a show that was in a converted porn theater because we moved from the 5th floor above the hardware store to a porn theater. And we had to tell people to come see this show. And they didn't know what this was. So we would have my friend Owen would dress up as Santa Claus. And we'd have everybody, this is like during Christmas time, when we'd have people, we'd give like rolls of wrapping paper to people. And it's like, hit Santa. And people would like whack Santa. And then we'd give them a flyer for a show. And that's how we get people to get to the show, right? We would name
should
these.
try that.
Yeah, like it's just like get people
whack
and just make them stop and just get a flyer. And then, so we were just advertising our own shows, writing our own shows, starring in our own shows. And then that grouping of people like went off. They're all over the place from, people who've written giant movies and television shows. And stars and everything. It's been a great that theater like launched so many amazing careers.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I picked the wrong people to partner with because most of the people I've partnered, I don't mean you, they don't go on to do anything.
He looked right at me when he said that.
No,
too.
I'm including you in the conversation.
But I understand this thing and this frustration. But it's like my whole career has been. You create it, you try, and trying to enjoy. And I think as I've gotten older, I think I've understood this more too. It's like, just enjoy the process because you don't know what the outcome is. You can make the best show possible that no one watches.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, like, for example, like Black Monday was a show that got great reviews. We did it for 3 years. But it just was never it just never found its full audience. And it's like, well, what can you do? The show is good, the reviews are good, the cast is good. It's like we just didn't have that, that was all. And so I look back on that show, I'm like, well, I wish we could have done it for a little bit longer. Or I wish more people would have seen it. But whatever. And The League is a show where no one was watching FX. And then we go on Netflix, and then the show balloons. And we were on at 10:30, and we were starting to get higher ratings than the 10 o'clock lead-in. So it's like, and I did a show on Adult Swim that was on at 12:15 a.m. on Thursday nights that were getting higher ratings than like Comedy Central, which is a crazy thing. But it's like you just don't know where it's going to all net out.
Tell me a little bit about The League, which Ted's going to watch.
Yeah.
This is not fully scripted?
No, The League is done the same way that Curb is done, like Curb Your Enthusiasm. So the idea is Jeff Schaffer and his wife Jackie Schaffer, they created it. Jeff was one of the writers on Seinfeld, then went off and created Curb with Larry and did like one of the Bruno or Borat movies. But Jeff is amazing. And Jeff and Jackie create these really nice outlines. So we'd have a 12-page outline. I wrote a handful of those scripts too. And it's oddly harder to write a script like that. 'Cause you're writing you have to have enough there that shows structure, scenes, and jokes. And then you're going to put your actors in there, and then we'd kind of craft it on set. But we did that for 7 years. And it was the best people there. It was Nick Kroll, John LaJoie, Mark Duplass, who, and Steve Ranazizi, all these great people. We got to make this show together, and it was.
So, do you like coming in without lines? I mean, do you?
I did. I loved it on that show, and I think that improv is a hard thing to do, and to do well. And I think that a lot of people think that improv is just come in, say whatever you want, and then we're going to go, and we'll fix it in post. And I think the way that that Jeff kind of approached it, and it's kind of changed my way of doing it too, is you craft it on set. You go back. You don't just go, we got one take, let's go, and we'll figure it out. You still are trying to finesse it and make it a real scene. And I think that sometimes improv gets a bad rap because it looks improvised. It doesn't feel like in the moment or real. And so I've worked with great people that also do that. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, when they direct stuff, they will finesse things. And I think that's the difference of just saying a crazy line, ad-libbing, and improvising around an idea or a scene.
And Veep, was that improvised
Veep,
as well?
Veep was a lot more structured, but Veep was one of those shows that Dave Mandel was on it when Dave Mandel was running it, and he's one of the guys that partnered up with Jeff Schaefer. It was Berg Schaefer Mandel. So Jeff went to go make the league, Dave went to do Veep, and then Alec made Silicon Valley. So these three seminal kind of comedies, they all went off and
Good group.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
And
I don't see the future of that in some of my
Thanks
people.
a lot.
But on that show, it was one of those things where improv was, you were open to beat a line, but it was the only show I've ever been on where the writer's room was on set, and they would be almost having a writer's room on set to be able to add new lines. So that show was never.
What do you think of that?
It was fun. I like working that way, and we're coming off of the league where it was like, all right, how about this? Try this. It's fun for me because I think it also keeps it really alive. Like, you're not stuck. You don't get, if something's not working, you don't go, oh, well, we'll figure it out later. It's like, no, if something's not working, let's break it down right now and then redo it. And I think you were talking about that in the bank scene, in your pilot. Like, you were saying, like, sometimes it's not working. It's not going to get better once you leave. So how can you figure out how to make it work here in the moment? And that, to me, is... I love it. I mean, I still improvise. I improvise over at Largo over here, right by you guys here over at the Cornet. And we do our, that's my background. My background is that, so I feel comfortable doing that.
Right.
And
all right, let's get to the most important.
Yeah.
You're playing pickleball.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Like everyone
of
else. And you actually got CBS primetime.
2 hours primetime, the Pickleball
Which is
special.
nuts.
Yeah. It was really nuts. Stephen Colbert
called
hosted.
Pickled?
It's called Pickled, and it's Funny or Die and Comic Relief USA. It's their first foray back into the United States comic relief, because I grew up with the Billy Crystal, Whoopi Goldberg, Robin Williams shows. This is their first thing back. And Stephen Colbert wanted to do this Pickleball special. And we got people like Sugar Ray Leonard and Emma Watson from Harry Potter and Will Ferrell and Tig Notaro, myself, my wife, to play pickleball on TV. Now, I mean, hopefully they'll do more of them. I think they should. It's interesting, though, because there's a weird backlash on pickleball right now. There's a backlash.
Tennis people are angry.
Well, everybody, it seems like, they're carving over, like they're taking away homeless encampments. They're doing this. They're doing everything. It's like
that's the worst.
There was like this idea of like I feel like sometimes the way people talk about like pickleball is like it's like heroin. It's like, it's in our parks. We don't want it in our parks. Get it out of there. And it's like the kids can't play. So it's interesting. Like, people don't even know what it is. And I think that special hopefully is, again, just maybe a prime time.
Does Colbert play? Why was he so interested in this?
I think his wife had gotten him a set, and that was it. And I think Funny or Die, Funny or Die actually had a great idea. They were like, we want to do this because it's the only sport where anyone can kind of just jump in, right? Like tennis, baseball, whatever. I mean, I grew up watching like the Rock and Jock shows, and I always loved that. But it's like, but you can't just put like Sugar Ray Leonard on a basketball court with like Emma Watson. Like, here you can have, you can have somebody who's in their 60s, it's somebody who's a younger person. Everybody can just kind of come together, and I think that's a great idea. If I was to see it done in the future again, I think it'd be fun to train people for a little bit, and then go up and have the matches, like learn the rules of the game, because I don't think in that special there was that much dinking and stuff like that.
Yeah, you had McNasty. Matt McNasty was
the best.
Did he help your game at all?
Matt was great, because I was the only one who really used Matt. I was like, look, we have this amazing pickleball coach out there. Like, I'm going to, like, everyone else is having cocktails and having apps. I'm like, I was only on the court. It was so hot. And
you guys were out like in Westlake Village?
Sherwood. Yes, Sherwood, yeah. And so, I just was like working with him, and he's amazing and a great guy, but also to train with, like, I didn't even know there was a pickleball coach. I didn't know there were people you could hire, and he is obviously like a GQ or Esquire magazines, like the pickleball coach of the stars, and I have to get out to his.
You're getting too much airtime, man.
Yeah.
Too much.
But I mean, it was great to because one of the things that's hard for me, I mean, this is very pickleball specific, but is hitting like these shots that come at your chest when you're playing at the net. Like, how do you do that? And it's like, well, like hit 10 balls right at my chest so I can just like learn that. And it gave me some great tips. I tell his tips to everybody that I work with. I have to get out there.
I mean, I love it because it is there is a cult-like feeling to it,
Yeah.
but everybody joins, you know, and anyone who starts to play just becomes obsessed with it because what you said, it does really bring people together. And speaking of those, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, but I took an Uber from Miami to Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if we talked about this, but I get there into like a rundown neighborhood, and there's a basketball court there that looks like nobody's fixed it in 25 years, brand new 8 pickleball courts, like sparkling lights, everything. And I'm going, what is going on here? And so you see whether it's some fucking politician decided he wants to play pickleball or Stephen Colbert likes pickleball. It is spreading in a weird way.
Well, there's a weird thing. It's like a point of access. I think the reason why there's so many basketball courts around is just because all you need is a ball, right? And then anyone can kind of at least attempt to play basketball on some level. And the same way with pickleball. Like if there's a racket out there, you can play. But tennis, you can't just like show up to a tennis court and just expect to play. Right. So I do think that is really fun.
Well, what I was saying here is they haven't fixed the basketball.
Oh, they haven't.
It looked like it was 30 years old, and the pickleball court looked like Wimbledon. And it is strange, and you are seeing people in every community going, we need these courts here. So, but I'm glad you're playing. We'll have to.
No, it's fun. We have a weekly game in our driveway. We've created one in our driveway, and it's amazing when you have a 74-year-old guy who came over to our house last week and kicked our asses, and it's like, and he's amazing. Like he's playing every week on an intense level, but he's a former tennis player.
Maybe Paul can introduce you to that guy.
He didn't move it. Like he didn't move at all. It was one of those guys you watch. It's like that. Just knew where the ball was at every given point.
Well, I've been saying I got to find some older people to play with because I play with like the young
you can't
pros.
Do that.
I'm getting hurt more and more, and people go, "Oh, you're getting hurt. It's pickleball." And one of the best players in the world is a friend of mine tore her ACL last week at the Nationals, and these injuries are happening. But anyway, this was great.
This is great.
Else?
I have one more question for you. Like, so now this is my as you're working on this and you're trying to sell it, and you obviously have your scripts written. Does your mind go to another project yet, or are you one of these people that's like, I have to be focused until this is seen to its end?
You know what? I've thought about this a lot because I think it's not that I have to be focused till I see it to the end. I think that one of the reasons I've done the little amount of work that I've done in my career, because a lot of people go, why haven't you done 40 television shows?
Yeah.
The pain of the it just doesn't work for me. Now that's not a good thing, by the way.
Right.
And if you can't handle that, I was lucky enough that I had success pretty early on. The first short film I ever made sold to Showtime. I mean, like I was 20 years old and made it on a shoestring budget. So I was lucky, and Entourage obviously made me some money. But the torture of what I go through when I'm working, and spending every second in the shower, and I really don't want to do that, and I know my older kids, they could feel it then because Entourage was really going then, and I'd be sitting at a party thinking about nothing but what I'm going to write. So I don't have a really middle gear, which I'm trying to find for this one. If this does go forward, I'm going to have to, but I really want to enjoy my 21, 19-year-old and this new baby right now, but I don't spend all day focused. It's when I go, okay, now I'm writing the script, which I decided to start again last week, that it just becomes all encompassing. I'm in the the room giving birth, and I'm like, all right, so maybe I could use this here. So I didn't give birth, obviously, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but that's probably one of the reasons that I don't do it more. So no, I'm not sitting around going, oh, what's the 6 other projects? I'm kind of like, which I've been before. This is it. It's this or bust, and I'll open up a bagel shop with Chris.
Yeah, no, I feel I'm kind of in the same ballpark. I don't really see myself doing anything else until this makes it.
And would you have done?
I want to focus on it making it because I believe in it so much.
And I think that you have to kind of see it through. Would you have done anything different? I mean, not creatively.
One
but
thing.
Besides that guy,
No. Doug and I, there's a lot of things that you don't know until you've gone through it. Mm-hmm. And you can't know without going through it. We struggled at the beginning of this project of how we were going to produce it. We were like, are we doing a half an hour? Should we film 2 episodes? Should we try to make a 3-episode short movie, hour and a half movie?
We should have. That's what I was kind of pushing for.
The only regret that I think I have with it is we believe, and by the way, there's no guarantee that this is true, but we believe that if we did a 90, call it 90 or 100-minute sort of 3-episode first pilot, that we could have sold that fairly simply as a movie, a standalone movie, and then it could have led to a series after that. But we got a lot of input from a lot of people that are very smart and capable people and experienced people in this industry. They were like, look, nothing's going to happen at 96 minutes that isn't going to happen in the first 26. Like, you're doing a pilot. So making it and spending way more money than you were already spending and doing that, they didn't look at it and go, oh, I see a huge benefit. I think we look at it in hindsight and say, I think if we would have made that 96-minute, short independent movie, I would not even short, just independent movie, it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I have actually zero doubt. If we did a 90-minute movie and everybody, if the actors and the crew were willing to work for the rates they were working for, which would have added another 20 days, so I don't know if they would have. That was one of the things we talked about and whether they would all be available, but there's no way we don't sell this as an independent movie quickly.
Right, yeah.
But I don't know if that leads to a series easier or not, because it still leads back to the same thing. That network has to say we want to spend the next 4 or 5 years, hopefully, on this thing. So
Yeah.
But but it's still not a regret. I couldn't be happier with the pilot. And my only regret is that we wasted time on some people representing it. That's really my only regret.
I'll also say too, what's so great about this podcast is you open up a part of the business that I think a lot of people don't get a chance to see, which is I think, people do see the deadline announcements and they don't see like all the kind of bullshit that goes on in between, like the way that you don't get a call back or the way the business shuts down, from July to September and then from, November through January. It's like, and these moments of waiting, sometimes you see something that's on TV. I remember like Game of Thrones was like in a drawer, like Mad Men was in a drawer, like, these things like and then all of a sudden they come out and they're like, oh, well, this is great. This must have been 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Like it doesn't always
Well, think
happen.
about that. HBO passed on Mad Men from the top writer. They're the second in charge of Sopranos. He writes that script, which
Matt was on Sopranos?
Yeah, he was the top writer on Sopranos. And I believe I believe that Mad Men is the best pilot ever made, along with Sopranos. I think those are the two best drama pilots I've ever seen, in my opinion.
Well, it's so to bring it full circle, we took a few meetings after Sundance, and I think the big problem that we had was there was a show on TV that had failed, and kind of like broadly, people knew it was a failure. And when I met with HBO, they're like, we really want to do this show. She's like, but can you pitch me a billboard that looks different than the billboard of that show that was a giant failure? Because it really did encapsulate.
Yeah.
And
which show was the giant failure?
I don't want to say it, but I'll tell you off air. But it was that was a really interesting thing to come down to that. Like, because in her mind, she's great. One of the people over at HBO that I know, it all just came down to that. Like, what can I show to people so they don't think it's this other thing that they already don't like? And that's what it came down. Now, whether or not that's a line or maybe it is, but it is that fickle.
Yeah.
Like, we just happen to be behind something that didn't work, even though this is a very different thing.
And right moment, Mad Men goes, and then they want 9 shows that sort of look like Mad Men.
Breaking Bad didn't sell to any network, and AMC wasn't a premier destination for anyone. And now it became like, oh, that's it's like no one knows, and that's the other part of it too. No one knows.
Yeah. I think that's the most sort of telling thing about this industry is that the people who are making the decisions, they themselves don't know whether what they're choosing is going to work, whether it's not going to work. The thing that they pass on 40 times already, that somebody revives and is like, oh, that's the biggest hit on television.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, that manager who, reached out to you out of the blue, if this show sells and is a hit, they'll be saying, oh, I helped them get that whole thing. I got that set up. And then there'll be, of course, a lawsuit announcement and deadline from that other guy who's like, that was my idea. I wrote that scene.
Can't wait to hear from Short Golf Attorney. So anyway, that wraps up another episode. And we're getting towards New Year's, but something's coming.
Try and get some sleep.
He's doing great. The Aura Ring is, look at it.
My Aura Ring is crushing.
It's really making it happen.